Buenas tardes a todos. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mi nombre es Inés Campos. My name is Inés Campos. Vamos a comenzar con el debate de exhibición. We're going to start with the exhibition debate. En primer lugar, procederemos al sorteo de las posturas. Captains, please. We're going to ruffle the positions. Ahora me gustaría presentarles a los jueces que formarán parte del jurado de este debate. Now, I would like to introduce you to the judges who will be part of the jury in this debate. Miss Fátima Núñez, concejal de Educación de Majadahonda, responsible for Education Department in Majadahonda Town Council. Miss María Muñoz, jefe de inspección de la Dirección de Área Territorial Madrid Oeste, Chief Inspector from the Education Administration. Miss Librada Carrera, inspectora de Educación de la Zona Madrid Oeste, Schools Inspector. Miss Lía Lim Caoco, asesora del CETIF Madrid Oeste, Advisor of the CETIF Madrid Oeste. Miss Maripé Menéndez, responsable de la Organización de Bachillerato Internacional en España, Responsible for International Baccalaureate Organization in Spain. Miss Alejandra García, directora del IES José Saramago, Headmistress of the Hosting School. Gracias a todos por su presencia. Thanks you for all for being with us. Como ya saben, estamos debatiendo acerca del siguiente tema. ¿Deberíamos frenar la creciente ola de tecnología? As you know, we are discussing about the following motion. Should we slow down the onrushing wave of technology? To my right, the team composed of, a mi derecha, el equipo compuesto por Lucía Ventura, Candela Casasus, Martín Pozo, Elizabeth Áñez y Elena Campos, que defenderá la postura a favor. Who will defend the position for the motion? To my left, the team composed of, a mi izquierda, el equipo compuesto por Claudia Molina, Patricia Lanza, Eva López, Mar García y Adriana Baldonedo, que defenderá la postura en contra. Who will defend the position against the motion? Permítanme recordar la importancia de permanecer en silencio durante las intervenciones y mantener sus teléfonos móviles apagados. Si alguien tiene que salir, por favor, esperen a los aplausos. Let me remind you the importance of being quiet during the speeches and to keep your mobile phones off. If you want to leave, please wait to the applause. Disfruten del debate. Enjoy the debate. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
In 1948, researchers proposed the use of paracetamol. However, it wasn't until 1956, when its safety was proved, that it was released on sale. This proves that postponing the launching of a product does not mean preventing innovation or stopping advance. It only makes it safer and more effective. Good morning. My name is Lucía Ventura, and together with my team, we will defend that we should slow down the onrushing wave of technology, because the faster we run, the easier we stumble. In order to do so, we will base on two strong arguments, our legislation argument and our education argument. But first, it's worth mentioning what onrushing means. The onrush of something is its sudden development. It happens so quickly and forcefully that you are unable to control it. I will now proceed to develop our first argument. Legislation is not keeping pace with the advancing technology. Reality demonstrates that legislation is behind technology. This gap consequently leaves us unprotected. In order to explain this, I will take the Japanese example. In 2005, Honda Sasimo robot was used to dispense trays at Japanese restaurants. However, it wasn't until 2015, 10 years later, when legal and regulatory issues were started to be addressed in a plan expected to take 5 years to complete. Ladies and gentlemen, this makes clear that if we don't take the time to make the laws correctly, this gap will widen, and consequently, we will be unprotected. Let's move now to our second argument. Education cannot keep up. Education must adapt for jobs and workers. It's indisputable that the advance in technology has been destroying jobs over the last century, despite the fact that it has also created new ones. However, do you think these new unemployed will be able to take up the new jobs immediately? They clearly need training, and that takes time. What's more, in the annual meeting of the new champions organized by the World Economic Forum, it was stated that, and allow me to read directly, the skills needed to work today change so fast that no education system can keep up with the constant need to reinvent how we work and live together. Ladies and gentlemen, it's crystal clear. If we don't want to be surpassed by technology, we should slow it down and let education keep up. To sum up, I would like to take up the analogy of paracetamol. Without a clinical trial, we wouldn't have been able to ensure its safety. This is what we need to do with technology: slow it down and therefore prevent unnecessary risks. Thank you very much.
Hello. Okay, perfect. As everyone knows, BlackBerry was one of the revolutionary concepts in the history of cell phones, as they introduced 1 letter per key instead of 3 per key. The problem was that even though phones started to introduce touchscreen, BlackBerry made a wrong decision and maintained the keyboard design, not studying the opportunity cost this would create. This refusal to update their design meant the downfall of the company. Good evening, my name is Claudia Molina, and together with my team, we support that the onrushing wave of technology shouldn't be slowed down, because we cannot afford assuming the opportunity cost this could create. Let me clarify what opportunity cost is. It is the value of the alternative you reject when you make a decision. That's to say, what we will lose if we slow down the onrushing wave of technology. We support this statement with 2 arguments. Our first argument, we are not willing to resign to our higher standard of living. And our second argument, we would put at risk our security. Now, I will proceed to develop our arguments. Our first argument, we are not willing to resign ourselves to a higher standard of living. Slowing down technology on purpose would be unreasonable, as we would be directly refusing to achieve a higher standard of living. For instance, if a member of your family had a disease, would you wait any longer than is necessary before this disease was cured? We definitely wouldn't. And what's more, the World Health Organization states that we have the obligation of not slowing down innovation. Let me read directly from the WHO fact sheet. State parties must take a step forward in conformity with the principle of progressive realization. This imposes an obligation to move forward as effectively as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a human right to receive the most effective health service as possible, and slowing down technology would be just the opposite. Now, moving forward to our second argument. This one states that if we slow down technology, we would put at risk our security. As technology, as we've proved, has become a vital tool to combat traditional crime. A clear evidence is the current use of photo-DNA by the Internet Watch Foundation in order to identify criminals responsible for child exploitation images. So, as you can see, it's crystal clear that technology has become a keystone to combat crime. As we've proved with our 2 arguments, if we want to advance, we need technology. To conclude, I would like to pick up the analogy of BlackBerry. This company went bankrupt as they did not consider the opportunity cost and made the wrong decision of not keeping pace with technology. And considering the current opportunity cost, under no circumstances should we slow down the onrushing wave of technology. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patricia, and I'm in charge of the first rebuttal. First, you talked about paracetamol, and you gave an example of that. But that is a case that it already had some substitute for it. So if a member of your family had a disease that could not be cured with the current medicines, would you wait any longer than necessary for it to be cured? Now, I would also like to talk about the Oxford definition of unrushing. It simply states it's advancing rapidly. You also talked about laws and how they're not keeping up with technology, but we are afraid to disagree with you on that. If you're a member of any social media or you have any internet in your house, you must have received an update on the privacy policy since the European Union, has updated a new thing. The General Data Protection Regulation, and it states that it secures our internet data. It was thrown in the 25th of May of 2018. Now, this proves that the gap is not as wide as you have said. Your question?
Could you tell us when was this policy originally planned?
It was planned around 2012. You also talked about education and how technology is advancing too rapidly for it. But the adaptation of education and the advance of technology is not incompatible. It's actually, as David Wallach, an educator and public speaker, says, we need technology in every classroom and in every student and teacher's hand, because it is the pen and paper of our time, and it is the lens through which we experience much of our world. This, ladies and gentlemen, states that we need to invest in education and instead of slowing down the unrushing wave of technology. Now I would like to pick up our arguments again and develop further. Our first argument, we are not willing to resign to our highest standard of living. Our partner already talked about the health issue, now I will develop on the poverty issue. It is a fact that technological advance has been the most essential factor in the Millennium Development Goals report in 2015 by the United Nations. In this graph that it shows the access to clean water, the light bars represent the access to clean water in 1990, and then the dark bars show the percentage of 2015. This shows a clear evidence that it is improving so much. And also, this fact is that the goals, we reach them 5 years ahead of the time that we should have. Now, I would like to develop on our second argument. We would put at risk our security. Ladies and gentlemen, any rules or laws that apply to us that slow down the unrushing wave of technology can and will be ignored by the criminals as they operate outside the law. In the White Book of Future Cybercrimes, developed by the Cybersecurity Protection Alliance, it states, and let me read directly, cybercrimes in 2020 will be adaptations of existing crimes to the technological developments of the next 7 to 8 years. This, ladies and gentlemen, proves that slowing down the unrushing wave of technology will only put criminals ahead of us and make us vulnerable. So thank you very much for your time.
What BlackBerry did was to reject technological innovation. We do not pretend to reject it, nor reject any of the possible opportunities. We just want to make sure, by means of a control system, that these opportunities are the most beneficial. Good afternoon, my name is Candela, and in this turn of rebuttal, I will dismantle some of the ideas proposed by the other team and explain why this onrushing wave should be slowed down. You have talked about how we're not willing to resign to our standards of living, and we couldn't agree more. However, you're not taking into account the negative effects that onrushing in these fields might have. Let's take the water access example you've presented. While there are many viable water purification solutions, choosing a technology that is appropriate for the capabilities of a given community can be really complex. So, ladies and gentlemen, slowing down the release of new technology doesn't affect the final beneficial results. It just assures them. Your question?
If you decide to slow down technology, would you slow down all areas of investigation or just a few? Who would decide this and how would this be done?
Well, this would be done by introducing a mandatory lead time established in an international agreement, which will give us time to adapt laws and education to current and future technologies. Well, you have also stated that criminals always find a way. The possible adaptation of cybercrimes are exhaustively studied in the White Book, which you have quoted. Nonetheless, it also says, and allow me to read directly, the capacities of law enforcement and the criminal justice system will need to be significantly enhanced in order to meet the challenges of cybercrime in 2020. Moreover, the authorities will be required to develop more creative and flexible responses to criminality. Ladies and gentlemen, the report itself acknowledges that the fact that the only way for us to face future criminal misuse of technology is by legislation. And this brings me to develop our first argument. My partner has already talked about an example in Japan in which law falls behind technology. What is more, Microsoft, in the study, The Future Computed Artificial Intelligence and Its Role in Society, says, and let me read directly, we need to address the need for strong ethical principles, the evolution of laws, training for new skills, and even labor market reforms. This must all come together if we're going to make the most out of this new technology. We're all going to need to spend more time listening to and learning from each other. This, ladies and gentlemen, demonstrates that the only way for technology and legislation to go hand in hand is by slowing down the onrushing wave of technology. Let's move on to our second argument. We must adapt education for youth and workers. My partner has already talked about the need to educate workers for new jobs through education. Furthermore, it's vital to slow down technology in order to solve other problems, such as overdependence or addiction. According to the study, prevalence of mobile phone dependence in secondary school adolescents by several experts, allow me to read directly. Mobile phone dependence has been found to be an emerging public health problem. There is need to generate adequate awareness and plan educational interventions. There is also need to identify vulnerable groups, for example, children and adolescents. Ladies and gentlemen, experts agree with us in the matter that the only way to treat overdependence and addiction is by means of education, and this is incompatible if we don't slow down this onrushing wave of technology. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Good evening, my name is Eva, and I will do the second rebuttal, and I will continue to dismantle the other team's ideas. I fear that you have not understood what opportunity cost is. It is the value of the alternative we reject when making a decision, any decision. In this case, it would be what we would lose if we slowed down the onrushing wave of technology. You have also said that legislation is not keeping pace with technology, which we have shown you is not true when we show you the privacy policy implemented by the European Union this year. Also, you have said that we would slow down the onrushing wave of technology by reaching an international agreement, something that we consider unattainable, considering that each country has its own technological development, its own laws, and its own political system. Yes?
Why do you believe that carrying out an international agreement would be unattainable?
Well, as I have already explained, differences between countries when talking about technological development are too wide, so it will be unreachable to get to an agreement on this matter.
I would like to talk about our first argument. We are not willing to resign to our highest standards of living. We are thankful that you agree with us that progressing is a need. And we have quoted the Millennium Development Goals, which says that thanks to technology, we have reached and obtained and set our goals of United Nations in a secure way. This is to say that if we can, and we have the moral obligation to achieve the highest standard of living as soon as possible. You have also mentioned that it would be complex to introduce new technologies in different communities, and we agree with you. But we are not only talking about launching new products into the market, we are also talking about distributing technology that already exists into developing countries, making a way to achieve goals universally. You have talked about the White Book of Cybercrime, but I feel that you have misread what it says. You have said that the only way to face future crimes is by legislation, and that is not true. However, what we propose is to introduce new techniques and ways to fight crimes and cybercrimes thanks to technology. You have also said that addiction would be only solution by education. But here, in this study by Mark Griffiths from the Nottingham Trent University, says, and let me read directly, whether social networking addiction exists is debatable, depending upon the definition of addiction used. But there is clearly emerging evidence that a minority of social network users experience addiction-like symptoms as a consequence of their excessive use. That is to say, that technological development and addiction have no relation whatsoever, only the excessive use of these technologies. Your question?
Do you think that laws are adequate?
Well, there are already laws that regulate and help us stop technologies from being used in a malicious way. So I feel that as they are only by demand, we cannot regulate technologies that do not exist yet. Thank you very much for listening.
So first of all, you've asked us a question whether we would wait longer for a familiar to be healed by a medicine we were waiting for. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we would not wait. But the last thing we'd rather do would be to put at risk our familiar. So we want to make sure this medicine is the safest one. That's why we want to introduce this lead time we propose. You've also attacked our first argument that laws are not advancing at the same speed as technology, and you've shown a privacy policy that has been recently implemented. But ladies and gentlemen, this is just one example, and it does not illustrate the whole range of fields that technology affects too. For example, we've talked about the Ondas robots in Japan that created a legislative gap for more than 10 years. We've also talked about Microsoft case that claims that it is vital to make legislation for artificial intelligence. And we can spend all day talking about the legislative problem that arises with the enterprise Uber, for example, or the Airbnb case. So I think that, ladies and gentlemen, please don't try to elevate the anecdote to category. Your question, please?
Is it worth to resign to possible advances that the current pace could give?
Now, of course, it's not worth it, ladies and gentlemen. But look, what we want is to make sure that these new technologies are the safest ones. And we wouldn't like to happen things like the thalidomide case. The thalidomide was a medicine that was used in pregnant women so they would not vomit while they're pregnancy. But finally, it resulted in malformations in the fetus. You've also proposed to solve all the problems that arise with education in technology by simply investing more in education. And you've also quoted a professor that says that technology is very important in education. And ladies and gentlemen, we agree, we strongly agree, but I think you haven't listened to our arguments, that we are claiming that we must adapt education to youth and workers. Because as we have shown with the World Economic Forum, it clearly states that there is no real education system that can keep up throughout investment with technological advance, and the society cannot keep up with the demand of the jobs that arise with technology. Then you've also, you've proposed that we should help people and society by the innovation of technology. But ladies and gentlemen, we have already explained that what we are trying is not to stop technology. What we are proposing is introducing a lead time so we can make sure that these new technologies are the safest ones. You've also claimed the impossibility of making an international agreement, and you've doubted that this could be done. But ladies and gentlemen, we believe that this, in fact, is not as hard as it may seem. In fact, it's done more often than usual. For example, we wouldn't be holding this debate if the European Union would have not agreed in the Erasmus program, for example. Your question?
Don't you think that continuing at the same
pace will make technology more accessible for developing countries?
Well, what we think is that introducing this lead time would also benefit these people to whom the technology would have access. And in fact, I think that postponing the release of certain technologies does not affect the accessibility of it. And to conclude, I would like to make clear our position. We propose that we should slow down the rushing wave of technology because there's two strong arguments. Law is not keeping up to the pace of technology, and that we should adapt education to youth and workers. Thank you very much.
As Bill Gates said, never before in history has innovation offered promise of so much to so many in such a short time. And this is exactly why we believe that technological development shouldn't be slowed down. Good afternoon, my name is Mar, and in this turn of conclusion, I will go over what has happened on this debate. But firstly, I would like to congratulate the other team for their interesting contributions. I will start remembering your ideas and how my team has dismantled them. Firstly, you have said that laws are not advancing at the same speed as technology, and you have showed some samples of Japanese legislation and a Microsoft study on artificial intelligence. However, as my teammates has remarked, the gap between laws and technology is not as wide as you present. And in fact, measures have been taken, as we showed you with the new privacy policy of the European Union. Secondly, you have stated education cannot be adapted to the speed technology is advancing. And you showed a study by the World Economic Forum and a report on mobile phone dependency. To this, we told you that we should invest more in education, and in regard of addiction, we said that there is no actual link between technological development and addiction, as it is stated in the report by the Nottingham Trent University, to which we received no answer. At this point, I will remind the arguments that we have used in order to support our posture. Firstly, we are not willing to resign to the highest standard of living. And to prove this, we showed the World Health Organization fact sheet and the Millennium Development Goals of the UN, mentioning the improvement of water access in developing countries. You told us that we didn't take into account the complexity of implementing technology in different communities, but you haven't showed any evidence. And in fact, we said twice, we have the moral obligation to improve our life standards as soon as possible, according to the World Health Organization. And we are glad, as you said, that you agree with us. And secondly, we would put at risk our security. To support this, we showed that evidence of the use of photo DNA and the White Book that recommends to continue developing technologies to fight crime. You told us that security is guaranteed by the legislation, quoting the White Book, but we have made clear that safety is not only legislation, but also using technology as a tool against crimes. In conclusion, we could have never imagined the improvements technological progress has brought to us. Arthur C. Clarke dedicates some beautiful words to this wonder. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Thank you.
The advance of technology has been the main focus of this debate. So I would like to remember an Alvaren's quote, which said, "Technological process is like an axe in the hands of a pathological criminal." This, ladies and gentlemen, is precisely what we are supporting here today, that the Russian way of technology should be slowed down. Good afternoon, my name is Elizabeth, and in this turn of conclusion, before moving on with what has happened during this debate, I would like to congratulate the opposing team on their interesting contributions. Now, I will start remembering your ideas and how my team has dismantled them. You have talked about the highest standard of living. My colleagues have explained that we evidently don't want to resign to them. But in order to ensure them, the advance of technology must be controlled. You have said that we put at risk our security, and by means of your own report, it's been proved that legislation is the only solution to address the misuse of technology. This acknowledges that we need to slow down the technology, and we are glad that you agree with us. At this point, I will remember our arguments that we have used to support our position. Firstly, laws are not advancing at the same speed as technology. And in order to prove, we've shown you the legislation gap of Japan and the study of Microsoft, which demonstrate that the only way for laws to keep on the Russian way of technology is by reducing its pace. You've said that wasn't true, and you tried to raise the answer to category, once again, proving that our point is right. Secondly, we must adopt education for youth and workers, and we stated the World Economic Forum. You've told us that the solution is to invest more in education, but my mates have already proved that this idea is quite unreal, as there is no educational system that can keep up with the quick speed of technology. Again, proving that the sensible thing to do is to slow it down. Last but not least, it is true that we have point of agreements, but not in the important aspect that in the reason that we must reaffirm ourselves on our postures. The Russian way of technology should be slowed down, because the faster you run, the easier we stumble. To conclude, I would like to share an excellent statement made by Aldous Huxley, which emphasized the importance of advancing the right way, not rushing and controlling the process, because the end cannot justify the mean. For this simple and obvious reason, the mean employed determine the nature of the ends produced. Thank you very much.